What's your horror story with bad parenting from strangers? I'll start. I'm in line at the DMV today and I see a mom who looks, honestly, maybe 35 years old, tops. She has what can only be a 14-year-old daughter with a skin-tight t-shirt with what little cleavage she has on display, along with shorts cut so short that her butt is hanging out. This girl's on her cell phone just yelling up a storm at whoever she's talking to. It's straight out of Maury Povich, because the best part is her mom is dressed exactly the same. Her 3-year-old son is running around screaming at the top of his lungs, bumping into people, and at one point I turn my back and he runs up and hits me on the back of the leg. I had the audacity to ask the mother to watch her kid and I get a huge mind your own business rant. She then proceeds to place him in a stroller, give him a Pepsi and some flaming hot Cheetos. Where on earth have all the parents gone? Why is it more important to be friends with your kid? What would you have done? As a side note, when she yelled at me to mind my own business, I said, fair enough. Her reply, yeah, that's right. I honestly just laughed out loud. What else can you do in that situation? If she's not going to parent the kids, it's not like you can. I used to work at a sandwich shop and there was a man in line with his son. The little boy was a bit bouncy and kept tugging on the man's arm saying, "Daddy, I need to potty real bad." And the dad would say, "In a minute, son." This went on for like 5 minutes and the little boy says, "Daddy, I have to potty now." And the man all of a sudden turns to the son and backhands him across the face and yells at him, "I told you to wait a minute." And the boy bursts into tears. My manager was right there and she was in a fury. She started yelling at the guy that he was a jerk and a horrible person and told him to get the heck out of her store and never come back. The guy was like, "Mind your own business. This is my kid and I can do what I want." And she said, "Leave now before I call the police." So the man hitched the boy up by his arm and practically dragged him out of the store. The worst part, they were less than 10 feet from the bathroom the entire time. That poor kid. I hope that kid ended up peeing all over the inside of Dad's car, because you know what? He deserves it. I used to babysit for a very dysfunctional family. The mom got knocked up on purpose so the dad wouldn't leave her. Subsequently, the dad hated the mom and resented the child. I know this because they fought about it often, publicly, and in front of the child. When I would arrive, the baby would always have a very dirty diaper that had obviously been like that for many, many hours. The baby's first word was her own name and then my name. Not mama or dada, her own 3 freaking syllable name. One day, the child had no milk or baby food left, and the mom goes to the store and comes back with just a pack of cigarettes. I asked her why she didn't get anything for the baby, and she said, "Well, I didn't have enough for both and I don't get paid till Friday." It was Wednesday and she was just gonna let the kid go hungry for 3 days. There was nothing edible in the house. I absolutely lost it. I don't think I've ever raged out on someone so bad in my entire life. I let her have it for a good 10 minutes, screaming at the top of my lungs the litany of reasons why she was a failure as a parent, and how I was gonna call CPS if things didn't change. Anyways, she burst into tears and took the cigarettes back and came home with milk. So I guess it kinda worked. I ended up making pureed veggies at home and bringing them to the little girl for the rest of the week. They moved away shortly after that, and I always wondered what happened to the little girl. Let's just hope that your reality check to her had a long-term impact. I teach first graders and I'm convinced most parents should not be raising children. Here's my most recent story. One day I start afternoon class and I ask my students how they're doing. One girl says bad and I ask her why. She says that she's hungry because she didn't eat lunch. I ask her why she hasn't had lunch yet and she says it's because her mom was playing on the computer and she forgot to feed them and then didn't have time. How the heck do you forget to feed a 7-year-old? Later I brought her a snack when I had a minute because there's no way I could let a kid go without food. Unfortunately, it's always the kid that suffers in these situations. I recently had an encounter from the other end of the spectrum. I was cycling through the downtown area when I passed this Chinese lady who let her tiny kid, I'm guessing around 3 or 4 years old, walk on the street side of her. And just as I passed, this kid is making some excited gestures at his mom, happily gibbering about something while simultaneously pretty much running backwards right into the side of me, while I'm cycling at full speed. He goes flying backwards. I'm pretty sure I hit him right in the face with my knee. I stop, horrified terrified to check if the kid is okay. He's making this face like he's inhaling a huge breath of air to start bawling. But before I can get off the cycle or he can start screaming, his mom looks back, sees what's going on, and just snips a few words of Chinese at him. The kid just looks at her and instantly regains his composure, with obvious effort. I'm pretty sure he's hurt, but he quietly just runs right back up to her. The lady just smiles and waves at me and walks off at a brisk pace with her kid, and I'm just left standing there looking completely stumped at the bystanders who seem just as confused. That kid is going to grow up tough, even if it kills him. I'm pretty sure his mom's going to make sure of that. At the end of the day, kids will be kids and accidents happen. Things like this sometimes can't be avoided. Mom was probably of the mind that if she just doesn't acknowledge it as a bad thing, the kid won't either and they can just move on. If he was really hurt, he would've let you guys know. I used to work at a crappy gas station / convenience store. One day, a woman comes up to the counter with her daughter. She places on the counter hot dogs, hot dog buns, Kraft mac and cheese, and a 6-pack of Corona. She then asks me for a pack of cigarettes. After ringing up all the items, she swipes her debit card and it doesn't go through. She tries several times. After about the 4th time, she turns to this little girl who couldn't be older than 6. And I kid you not, she says, "Looks like you won't be eating tonight," and walks away, leaving her little girl at the counter tearing up. I was dumbfounded, and before I could say anything, the little girl yells to me, "You're a big meanie," and ran out of the door crying. Worst Thanksgiving ever. I mean, she could have tried putting some stuff back to see if it would go through at that point. Maybe the beer and cigarettes. You know, just priorities. While queuing in a coffee shop in England, 2 police officers walked in the door and went straight up to the agitated-looking woman in front of me. They started questioning her about her son, asking when she had last seen him, how old he was, what he was wearing, things like that. So it was fairly evident from the conversation that she had quite recently lost her 6-year-old kid. Both officers kept confusedly looking around the shop until the woman felt obliged to explain why she was in there, saying, "I'm gonna look for him. I'm getting me and my husband a coffee first. Go on ahead, we'll catch up." After picking up my order, I turned around to see them both sitting at a table drinking their coffees like not even a single care was given. As I walked out the door, I saw the woman peer out the front window, looking for her son, I suppose. Yeah, she doesn't seem to have as much urgency as you would think, does she? I was at the store with my dad, and we see this woman take her baby's bottle and pour Mountain Dew into it before giving it back to the kid. This is a baby, no more than a year old. My dad goes up to the lady and asks if she really just gave Mountain Dew to the kid, and she replies, "Yeah, he likes it, so I give it to him. I always give him what he wants." I fear for that generation. I was at the mall once and there was a young family in front of me. The little brat in the high chair didn't like the cheeseburger from McDonald's they got him. So he wailed and screamed and then picked up the cheeseburger and threw it at the dad, painting his shirt with ketchup and mustard. The dad then went up and got the kid another meal. I remember thinking if I did that to my dad, I wouldn't have made it out of the mall alive. Look, sometimes you gotta discipline your kid. I get it, they're your kid, but you can't let them get away with stuff like this. You're not doing them any favors. I saw a kid, probably 5 or 6, walking with his dad to soccer practice. They walk to one pitch and there's no one there, and the kid says, "Oh, sorry, we're over there," pointing to another field, maybe 150 yards away. The dad slaps the kid on the back of the head and calls him stupid and other names. Some kids have no chance. Like, come on, that's such a small mistake and you're gonna go ahead and smack the kid for it? Who's being the child in that situation? I went to a barbecue thrown by a friend of a friend. There was a woman who showed up with their ex-husband and his new girlfriend. All 3 were drunk and a bit too friendly with each other, while alternating name-calling. With them was a 2 or 3-year-old little girl, cute as can be with a real light about her. I vaguely remember them telling very inappropriate stories. When the little girl says she's hungry, the father goes and gets the bag of McDonald's he'd been grazing out of and pulls out a near-full container of fries. He proceeds to grab a few and then throw them on the lawn. The girl, without missing a beat, runs around picking them up off the lawn and eats them. He repeats this over and over in front of all the other adults, who didn't seem to take issue. It was like a game to him that he was clearly enjoying. Mom even smiled at it. My wife and I promptly left the party. This guy's treating his daughter like an animal. Someone needs to call CPS. I was lining up at the register at some store, and there was a girl around 10ish and her mom in front of me. And the little girl asked her mom if she can get the Harry Potter books because they're on sale. And the mom replies, "Why do you need the stupid books for? We got a big television you can watch the movies on." God forbid some kids want to read nowadays. I worked at the YMCA in Houston, and we did programs that reached lower-income neighborhoods, the kind full of crime and poverty. One day we were letting the kids go, and we watched the rides leave as a security issue. One of the kids had made a drawing earlier that he was particularly proud of, and showed it to his dad, gleaming. The dad immediately snatched it out of the boy's hand, ripped up the drawing, and smacked the kid, in full view of us employees. He went on about how he shouldn't be doing homosexual stuff like drawing, and smacked him a couple more times. Needless to say, we called the authorities and he was arrested for child abuse, or something similar. How does this man think he's gonna get away with something like that in full view of everyone who's very much interested in this kid's well-being? I've been a nanny for a little over 5 years, so I've seen my fair share of crazy families. But there's one babysitting job that sticks out more than any other. The ex's mom referred me to her hairdresser, so when she called me, I was pretty excited to go to her house. I was watching a 4-year-old boy that everyone raved about being so adorable and fun. He sure was cute, but fun is not the word I would use to describe that night. She left telling me she would be home anywhere between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Came home at 4 a.m. and got mad at me for falling asleep on the couch. The kid had the worst ADHD I've ever experienced before, and there was absolutely no food or drink in the fridge, other than margarita mix and a 2-week-old half-gallon of milk, which he said he drank earlier that day. All of the sippy cups that they owned smelled like rotten eggs. I felt so bad for this boy. I looked through every drawer to see if I could find anything to give him, and all I managed to find was workout supplements, steroids, needles, and lots of different pills like phentermine and ephedrine. I bought him some dinner, got them a fresh gallon of milk, and never came back to that house again. Another case of the parents are crappy people and the kid suffers. We went to a soft play center with my niece the other day. One boy managed to find this big red ball and jam it at the bottom of the slide. His little brother then proceeded to go down the slide and get stuck. Chaos ensued for a while as they tried to get the boy out. The parents were going on and on at the staff. Eventually, they swindled a free drink out of the place. Then they gave their daughter a lollipop, no food is allowed in the actual play area, and she ran around the play area and climbed the stairs to come down the slide. We were watching all of this whilst keeping an eye on my niece, basically getting her to stay out of the way. The parents made barely any effort to get the lolly off her. She then went into this little viewing thing made of perspex with the lolly in her mouth and was dribbling. Her drool then proceeded to drip down to where we were sitting. We promptly left after being completely grossed out. This is by far the nastiest family I've ever come across, and a very good argument for contraception. Yeah, some parents are a walking billboard for reasons to not have kids. In high school, I made friends with this really shy guy who stuttered and was generally socially awkward, but really nice. He was also a genius pianist. He was taking 2 years for one at his piano courses. He was composing amazing pieces at the age of 16, and I truly admired his ability. His parents, however, didn't see it that way. They were both engineers, and they considered his love for music despicable, worthless, and a bad habit that needs to be uprooted. When he was practicing at home, they tossed old shoes at him, and they made him sleep on the floor if he played for more than 2 hours. Once a professor from the musical academy called them to tell them that they have an amazing son and that he could be famous one day. They hung up the phone. When high school was over, he really wanted to apply to the musical academy, but they didn't let him. They said that the only courses they would ever fund were the ones in math and geography, the qualifying subjects for the economy university. So he had to go there for his higher education. I haven't seen him in a good while, but I heard he went abroad. I hope he escaped those jerks for good. It really sucks to see kids who have an amazing amount of talent and parents that just don't support them the way they need to. My mom is a teacher at a primary school in England in a really bad part of town. The stories she brings home are appalling, from kids who have never been read to or even talked to much who come to school age 5 without being able to speak in proper sentences. Also, the saddest things often involve parenting from the previous generation. The standout event being a mother who came into my mother, the music teacher, and SBS, that she doesn't know any nursery rhymes to sing to her children, which was one of the set tasks for bonding type homework. She spent an hour with that woman teaching her Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I was at a mall playground with the wife and 2 kids. My son was 3 years old and was running around with about 20 other kids, most of them his age. Keep in mind that kids can't be taller than 3 feet to play in this little playground. There was this one fat woman and she was watching about 4 kids, and all of them were taller than 4 feet and they were playing rough, pushing each other around and whatnot. My son goes around the area that they were playing at and starts playing by himself, and one of the kids tries to kick my son. My wife, who's 5'2" and 100 pounds, calmly walks that way with my 3-month-old daughter and tells the woman, who's like 5'6" and about 250 pounds, to watch her kids because they were playing a little rough. She said, "Okay, whatever." My wife stays there and watches just in case something happens. The older kid goes running towards my son and pushes him. My wife tells the kid, who's about 9, not to push my son. The woman flips the heck out and starts screaming, "Don't scream at my baby," and blah blah blah. My wife tells her that she should pay more attention to her kids and how they're too old to be playing around smaller kids. She tells my wife to shut up and not to tell her how to raise her kids. My wife starts walking away and the woman starts getting louder. So from my seat 15 feet away, I yell at her, "You do not talk to my wife that way. Your kids are misbehaving and you're doing nothing about it. Learn how to be a good parent." She shuts up and looked at me in disbelief. She didn't know I was with my wife, or that I would talk to her like that in front of so many people. She then started to talk crap again, and we ignored her. After 5 minutes of her ridiculousness, my wife got the security guard and she got her butt kicked out of the place. 15 minutes after, she passes doing threatening signs at my wife, but when I looked at her, she stopped and looked away. I was seriously raging and about to beat her, but I did my best to calm down and be a responsible adult. I totally get it, my friend. Interactions like that get your blood boiling, especially if someone's gonna go threatening me and mine. "If you don't wear these pink shoes I'm buying you, I'm gonna cut all your rabbits' heads off." Sadly, that was actually my dad talking to a 10-year-old me in a thrift store. He then proceeded to get into an argument with a woman who said, "You're the most horrible person I've ever heard in my life," and called her a man-hater and a lesbian before we finally left. Compared to some of the other stuff, that's relatively mild. Yeah, my childhood sucked. I was at a movie theater and we had just walked in and sat down in our seats since the theater we were going to was open. An employee, probably around 35 years old, walks in and asks everyone, a small handful of people, to leave for just a few minutes so we can clean it. He had a stutter and some type of mild disability. The employee was super friendly and nice about having to ask us all to leave. This dad with a beer belly and cut off sleeves who was there with his 3 preteen and teen kids started making fun of the employee and the way he spoke, joking, mimicking, and trying to get his kids to join in with him. I chewed that jerk out. How are you gonna set an example like that for your kids? This guy's being super friendly, working hard, and you're gonna give him a hard time because of the way he speaks, which he can't control, by the way. Some people really shouldn't breed. I worked as a waitress for about 4 years. One family was very rude and demanding every time they ate there. Their children, ranging from 5 to 10 years old, would snap at me or shake their cups to get my attention. When we didn't come right away, the children would literally start screaming, while the parents laughed. Another family had a 12-year-old daughter that would take all the sugar packets from the table and play with them. Much of the sugar ended up on the floor or on the table. Once I figured out what she was doing, I would go take away the basket before they sat down. Lastly, I only saw this family in there once, but it was a tatted up gangster couple. The mom was no older than 23, and they had 4 kids. Let them run around the restaurant untamed and basically ignored them the entire time. They made a mess of the tables and didn't even tip. Oh, and they also tried stealing quarters off this cancer research donation thing we had. I work customer service at Loblaws part-time while I go to school. Lucky me. I've grown resentful of people. One day, I encountered a lady who was absolutely flabbergasted that her milk, on which the expiry date was clearly written, had gone bad. She was going on and on complaining. Had the store manager called down, the front end manager, and the dairy manager too. Once this whole ordeal was handled, she turns to her 14-year-old daughter and says, "Now that's how it's done." As someone who worked in customer service and retail for a good portion of their life, I hate people like this. Don't be teaching your kids to be the same jerk you are. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think it should be mandatory that every person is to work at least 2 years in customer service, just to learn to be a little humble. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.